Mr. Gerrard, can I start with you, and welcome back, because it was 3 years ago you came and gave evidence to the committee and came up with some quite alarming figures, as you have again now. What's changed with the co-op's approach over the last 3 years, if anything?
I think we've continued to innovate in terms of how we protect our colleagues. We continue to spend 3 or 4 times the sector average per store on security. We've introduced body-worn cameras through much more of our estate. We've increased the use of what we call tactical guarding, which is undercover guarding that goes in and detains offenders in the act and call for police support. We've also, as some of the crime types have changed, so we've seen over the last 18 months a real rise in what we call kiosk breaches. So many of our stores will have kiosks around them. Last year there were 1,200 kiosk breaches. They are invariably armed and they are targeting high volume. So we've invested £4 million to introduce already 200 very, very secure kiosks, and we're going to invest more. So it's innovating to do things differently to try to tackle. And the last thing I would say, I think this is the most important thing, is we continue to develop more partnerships with the police. If I look at, so we've currently got 12 different partnerships across the UK. One of our early ones was in Sussex, as you know, with Katie Bourne. But we've now got 12, and if I look at what's happened in the first quarter of this year, results in terms of offenders managed, sentences, CBOs, they're about 200% up year on year in 24 compared to 23, and I think that's the secret, working with police to maximise the impact they can make as well as what we do.
Okay, so you've spent a lot of additional money, you've done a lot around designing out crime, supposedly, but you've just told us that the level of crime is the highest it's ever been, so that's not worked, is it?
So, well, I'm not sure there's a counterfactual to say if we hadn't done it, something different would happen. What I would say is what's at the heart of the problem there is no matter what we do, there comes a point where you need police support. That's the reality. And up until October, the police, I'll give you 2 bits of data, not unique to the co-op, other retailers will say the same thing, 2 bits of data. When we were asking for police support, in the first quarter of 2023, the police did not turn up in 70% of occasions. And we weren't asking for support for someone's nicked a ham sandwich. To give an example, a colleague rings with an armed robbery in space and he's told to ring 101, the non-emergency line. So that's the first point. The second point is, even when we detained, and I do stress this is before October, because I think something different happened since. Before October, when we were detaining offenders, our security guards were detaining offenders in store, we called for police support, we made the citizen's arrest, the police did not turn up in 80% of occasions. That means we let that individual go. So you can say it hasn't worked. We think we've kept our colleagues as safe as possibly could. We were disappointed by the police support. Things have changed, and I think that is worth saying, and I'd like to explain at some point how they've changed.
So in terms of your security guards, because as you know, this has been a moot point in the co-op stores in my constituency, has your policy on the use of mighty security guards changed since you last gave evidence?
In terms of?
Well, you told us that they are for a visual deterrent only.
So they are primarily. So we have 2 kinds of guards. The static guards that you will see at the door are for visual deterrent and will intervene as needed, and we can talk about some examples where they have intervened in your constituency and were assaulted as a result. But we also have undercover guards who are there deliberately to intervene and detain people. So we have 2 types of guards because we've developed how we work.
So in terms of what your staff can do, including the security guards, what are their powers, and how often are they likely to exercise those powers rather than rely on the police not turning up?
Yeah, so shop workers have no more powers, nor do more security guards than any other member of the public, so they have a power of citizen's arrest. In common with, I think, every retailer in this country, we tell our colleagues not to intervene if they're going to put themselves in danger. And the same would apply to those security guards. I can give an example, and we've discussed this before, Mr. Loughton, about Lancing. We have a particular problem at that store, and we were not getting a police response. When our security guard intervened with some youth offenders, they were attacked by the youth offenders. They detained the youth offender and called for police support. The police didn't turn up in time but the youth offender's family did, who proceeded to give the guard a good kicking before the police did arrive. So that police response is critical in giving my colleagues, all shop workers and security guards, the confidence to intervene.
Okay. With respect, Mr. Gerrard, as you know, there are many instances in that store and other stores in my constituency and elsewhere in the country where the security guards specifically will not intervene because they're told to be a visual deterrent only. And it's not them that gets assaulted, it's members of the public who get assaulted because they've stepped in to try and stop people nicking stuff, and they put themselves in the front line of danger. But it's the staff who step back, which is not acceptable, isn't it? Because you're not just there to protect your staff, you're also there to protect your customers who bring you your earnings.
Yes, absolutely, and which is why we spend almost 4 times more than anybody else in the sector on security. What I would say, in the case of Lancing specifically, 1,000 incidents in that store report in 2023, including serious violent assaults. The police never turned up before July, and they only turned up in July because he went viral of a PCSO sat in a car refusing to intervene. The frustrating thing, Mr. Loughton, the really frustrating thing is that when Sussex police, who are normally really good on retail crime, this was youth offending, when they did intervene, the problem stopped within months. When we work with police, when we do our bit and they do their bit, you can tackle this. And I think it's really dangerous to suggest that shop workers or retail or security guards should intervene and put themselves at risk when they know there is no police support coming.
Okay. Without getting too parochial on this, as you know, because you were part of the meeting where a neighbouring supermarket, where they have a very different approach to security guards, where they have security guards on the door who will physically prevent known or suspected shoplifters and troublemakers coming in, whose staff and security guards will trail suspected shoplifters and troublemakers around the store and will eject them, and who will proactively, where it's children involved, go and speak to the parents of those children and threaten those parents that they will not be allowed to shop in that store unless they get a grip on their children's activities. And the rates of shoplifting and violence in that neighbouring store to yours is a fraction of what it is at your store. And the problem is the incidence of shoplifting and antisocial behaviour at the co-op stores in my constituency is double or treble that of comparable stores elsewhere. You said when you came before, Mr. Gerrard, that most crimes are based on risk and reward. It's become a well-known fact that the risk of being intercepted by a member of staff, let alone a security guard, where you have them and you don't have them in most of the stores in my constituency, is minimal. Therefore, you have become the go-to store for shoplifters and troublemakers. That's, in my constituency, I'm afraid that's the fact of the matter.
I don't think that is the fact of the matter. You are comparing a convenience store to a large box retailer, number one. No, number two, that large box retailer, if they knew what that local store was doing, would be extremely disappointed because they're putting themselves at significant risk. We have shown in Sussex, when we have proper response, that you can take these individuals off the street and solve the problem. Sussex police in general are extremely good. This is a problem of youth offending where it were 700 offences. There was no response whatsoever from the police, including the sergeant that spoke to you.
The issue is the same for the neighbouring retailers as it is to you, and the numbers with the co-op are just way higher. And when I last went with the police around the co-op not so long ago, none of the shop workers were wearing body-worn cameras because they chose not to. And all of the tagged items, which now includes Nutella chocolate spread, is in a plastic box and tagged, were not actually tagged. It was for show only. And isn't that the problem, Mr. Gerrard, that criminals know that the co-op are visual deterrents only, and despite what the police response may be, you are not doing your bit to intervene on the criminals who are raiding from your...
That is a scandalous thing to say for an organisation that spends 3 times the sector average, that because of their work with the police has seen more than 100 offenders managed this quarter alone, And I would say to you that if you compare convenience stores with convenience stores, you will see that the Co-op is no more targeted than anybody else. The data that Ed has provided...
That's just not true in my constituency. You know the figures of my constituency.
But
you are targeted far more than anybody.
You're comparing this to a big box.
Okay, you both can't speak at once.
And just saying that you've spent 3 times as much, all the perfectly understandable, reasonable things you've done on designing out crime or whatever, at the end of the day, you are spending far more than other retailers, and you are being targeted far more than other retailers.
That is not true. That is factually not true.
If you'd like to give us the figures for the stores in my constituency, which I know compared with others, then I think we'll know that is true.
And if you compare convenience store estate to convenience store estate, then you have a very different perspective. You are comparing a big box with a specific entrance and products in different areas to a small format store. It is frankly naive to compare the two.
Okay, so you'll provide the information.
I'm very happy to.